Today I want to talk about Wuthering Waves' endgame and how I think it's a little overhyped by the community. It's often used as a point for Wuthering Waves, usually compared to Genshin Impact, which only has the Spiral Abyss. However, I do think that is a little misleading. People will say Wuthering Waves has 3 endgame modes you can enjoy, and while they do have more endgame than Genshin Impact, I would not agree that they have 3 endgame modes. So these game modes are the Elusive Realm, Holograms, and Tower of Adversity. Those are the 3 modes people are claiming that are endgame that you can enjoy, that are going to be better than, Genshin Impact's Spiral Abyss. Now, I'm going to start right off with the Elusive Realm, because this is the one that I don't believe is endgame at all. This is not an endgame mode. It is the equivalent of like the simulated universe for Honkai Star Rail. It's a randomized roguelike challenge mode where you just pop in with one character, you battle the RNG based off of the upgrades you can get, and you essentially just curb stomp them, because every character so far, as long as you win the RNG rolls, you can build your character up to be so strong that you can just auto spam normal attacks and win the stage on the highest difficulty. It's a fun mode, don't get me wrong. I really do enjoy all of the new mechanics they add for the characters available right now, but I just don't think it's an in-game mode. It's certainly a for fun mode that you can, enjoy when there's downtime, but players who are looking for an end game, they're looking for something to test their characters out. After grinding to get all of this gear, they want some sort of mode that's going to challenge them, test their skills, test their characters, and the Elusive Realm is not that. It's a power fantasy kind of mode. So I would not consider Elusive Realm a endgame mode. They can certainly make it endgame by adding in, stronger enemies, more levels. We have 5 levels right now. Level 5 is, sure, it's harder. You don't get any trial characters, so you do have to rely on your own characters. But, I've cleared it with Yang Yang. Yang Yang's not a DPS, main DPS by any means, but I use her that way anyways. And she has this infinite vortex upgrade where she spams her heavy attacks and everything just melts away because they can't escape her endless cyclones. It's super easy. But they can kind of make it in-game viable if they add more difficulties that actually are harder to clear, that you actually do need to use some form of skill and have a well-built character in order to clear it alongside all of those random upgrades you get. So that is an option, but it's not in-game in my opinion. The other 2 modes are Hologram and Tower of Adversity. Now, I 100% agree that these are the in-game for Wuthering Waves. The holograms are the hardest content right now, both with a skill check and a stat check. And this is the endgame that most players will probably be working towards, but it's also going to be kind of trivialized by whales and heavy spenders, just because they're going to have like the sheer stats to completely blow through the enemies. However, the issue with holograms in itself is that it is a finite game mode, and that the one-time clear rewards does not encourage replayability. And sure, you're going to have some players who are going to continuously fight stage 6 of a hologram for fun, for challenge, to do it with other characters, and they'll try and do it multiple times. But the vast majority of players, if they can even clear it, which they probably won't, let's be honest, but the vast majority of players who are going to clear it are only going to clear it once for the reward, and then they're never going to touch it again. They're going to wait for the next hologram to come out, or move on to another in-game mode. So the one and done nature of the holograms does make it a problem the older an account gets, because as players get stronger, they get stronger characters, they get better gear, they get better equipped to deal with these holograms. Eventually they'll be able to clear them, and then when they do clear them, there is no real reason to try them again. So at that point, when they do get to that point, they have cleared the end game, and now there's no reason to really play anymore. And so they might possibly move on when the goal is to have some sort of content that's going to keep you coming back, to keep playing. Which again, unless you're hyper skilled, you're not going to be clearing hologram 6 anytime soon. I mean, we got sweats who are clearing it right now, not even a month into the game. And those are going to be the people who are probably going to be playing hologram 6 multiple times just for fun. But others, as you get 3 months into your account, 6 months into your account, a year, 2 years, 2 years later, you're going to be clearing these modes no problem, and you're never going to touch them again. So I do think that is an issue when we are talking specifically about endgame content. The last endgame content is the Tower of Adversity. This is quite literally the Spiral Abyss with some added quality of life features to it, and a third tower that would probably be equivalent to a floor 13 and 14 for Genshin Impact. There is almost no skill involved, and it's just one big DPS check against the clock. Did you get lucky with your gear? Are you using your kit on cooldown? Do you have your rotations down? You're probably good if you check all those marks. The first floors are going to be full of tanky, HP inflated fodder that kind of really don't pose any threat to you at all, and they just exist to burn down the clock with their annoying movements. I think one of the floors it was full of the Havoc and Fusion Dread mains, and I mean, if you spent any amount of time farming those on the overworld, they are not difficult to fight. They have one attack. The Havoc Dread main has, I think, like two or three attacks, but they constantly jump around, jump out of your attack range, spread out, so you have to run around, chase them all down, whittle them away. And it's not difficult, it's just annoying tedium because, you know, there's no skill involved. It's just making sure you have the DPS to kill all of them before, you know, 2 minutes pass on the clock. And then the final floors are just a boss fight, and these boss fights are fights that we've done dozens of times already. They're just hyperinflated HP. They're not even hologram level. They don't do hologram level of damage. They don't have any of the hologram mechanics that would actually kind of make it challenging and, you know, skill based. Even the level 100 Harambe fight, it's quite literally Harambe, just level 100. Has all of that HP that you have to burn through. He doesn't summon his monkey clones. He doesn't even summon his giant log to, you know, smack you around with. It's just, he punches, he has a grab, you dodge all of that, you're fine. You just go to town, make sure your rotations are down, have the DPS to kill him. It's not difficult. The Tower of Adversity is going to fall into the same pitfall as Genshin's Spiral Abyss if they don't change or innovate anything. Fighting non-threatening meat sticks that only really exist to annoy you and make your experience miserable is going to get old real fast. Really, any Genshin players dissatisfied with the Spiral Abyss will see Tower of Adversity as one in the same, and I would not be surprised if they don't even bother with the game mode after a few updates. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and hopefully they'll make some changes in the upcoming patches. But if we're still in the same Tower of Adversity setup by 1.4, 1.5, like, this game mode is basically going to be dead to me. I'll just stick to the hologram. So it wouldn't be fair to criticize the current in-game content without offering some improvements or suggestions that I think would make them better, and which I do think, at least for one of them, is actually going to happen. Going back to the holograms, the best way to improve the holograms, I believe, to make it repeatable, is to just constantly update them. As long as there's a new hologram, I want to say if there's a new hologram challenge every patch, that's going to add more difficult content every patch to test the in-game players, whether it be a full-on new hologram fight with 1 to 6 difficulties or adding a new difficulty to the existing holograms. So for example, in patch 1.1, we have all of our holograms right now. In 1.1, if they add in a new hologram with 1 to 6 difficulty modes, I think that's going to be great, a great tide over for 1.1. And then in 1.2, if they don't want to add in a new hologram boss, because we still have a bunch of bosses to get through. We only have 4 holograms right now, and there's like 8, 9 bosses on the map or whatever. So they can make more holograms. Easy. But if they don't want to add a new hologram in 1.2, then they could go to the previous holograms and add a level 7 to them, or maybe to half of them, to some of them, to 1, whatever, so that for that patch, players can tackle that level 7 hologram fight. And then for 1.3, they add a new hologram node with a 1 through 7 difficulty, and 1.4 they add in, you know, hologram level 7 for the ones they didn't add in, or level 8, and they just continuously ramp up the difficulty and scaling to constantly give players in-game content as we're moving forward. So it's just a constant cycle. Newer players are going to have a laundry list of in-game to get through, and then the older players, as they're clearing the in-game, they're getting more in-game every patch. I think that's the best way for holograms to go forward, because if they just leave it as is, don't add anything to the holograms, don't improve them, don't give players more, once players complete them, they're just not going to engage with that content again. As for Tower of Adversity, I'd like to see them focus more on skills rather than a DPS check. We have this amazing combat system with a bunch of counter and parry play, so I think players should really be challenged and rewarded for their technical skill. Make the enemies in the tower harder, combine enemies with more advanced movesets or difficult movesets to work around without making them hyperinflated in and an HP sponge. You know, maybe instead of just having the final stage be one boring little boss that we've fought dozens of times, maybe combine 2 bosses into one. What if the final level in one of the towers was a duo Mephis fight? You know, you have Thundering and Tempest Mephis together, and you have to fight them together. I think that would be something that would test player skill more than just, you know, having Harambe with a billion health and no improved moveset, and you're just sitting there dodging his punches and then going to town on him. But if they insist on keeping the timer to beat and being a DPS stat check, why not go in the opposite direction and make it more fun by having players clear as many waves in the time allotted and earn their stars that way based off of the waves cleared? So sort of like the Alloy Smelt event, but as an in-game mode. The Alloy Smelt event is incredibly fun. You get to go to town on an endless wave of enemies, and you get rewarded for having your rotations down. In the Alloy Smelt event, if you get your rotations down, you get a higher score. Whereas if you're, you know, just clicking away and not bothering with rotations, you're going to get a much lower score. I think following suit with that, where properly dodging, properly parrying, opening up that DPS window, hammering down your team's rotation to be as perfect as possible will net you more waves cleared, which is going to get you more stars. And at the very least, it will be fun because you get to clear waves and waves and waves and waves of enemies, and you can do it again to sort of beat your previous record and try and push on to the next wave within, you know, a 2-minute, 3-minute timer. Instead of stressing yourself out because you spent 2.5 minutes wailing on this hyperinflated HP enemy just to turn around and realize that there's a sniper in the far corner of the arena, so you have to waste another 15 seconds running over to them to try and kill them before, you know, your next 20-second timer runs out, preventing you from getting 3 stars. And I do think if the Tower of Adversity is unchanged, it's going to get a lot more heated criticism and complaints by 1.3, maybe even 1.4, when more players can regularly clear the content. For live service games, in-game needs to be repeatable, and they need to have incentives to do it. Holograms certainly have the incentive to clear, they just lack the incentive to repeat. And I do think this can be easily fixed by just making sure that the hologram updates are consistent and frequent enough. And then the Tower of Adversity, they do have the incentive to repeat the content, but it is not going to be enjoyable, especially since it is essentially a 1-for-1 repeat of the Spiral Abyss, which is already heavily criticized for being stagnant for 4 years. The framework for good endgame certainly exists. It's in the game, it's right there. It just needs to be developed more and continue to innovate rather than remain stagnant. So let me know down below what you think of Wuthering Waves' current endgame. Do you think it's fine as is, or what are your concerns regarding these game modes? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you for the next one.